6.1 Notational Analysis by Ewan Cochrane. Biomechanics. What is biomechanics? Biomechanics is the study of the mechanical laws related to the movement or structure of the human body. So, people look into biomechanics because it then helps prevent injuries. So, it helps finds the optimal technique. And then doing this, if you find the perfect technique, it will help prevent the injuries as you're all going in the correct movement that your body's meant to. And it will also help then develop equipment, which will then, once you've identified the safest method, you can then develop equipment to enhance the performance or to help prevent the injury. So, notational analysis in general. Notational analysis is a way of recording performance, whether it be a solo performer or a team, and it can be used to identify weak points or strengths of individuals, or as a team again. So this is good because it allows coaches who are finding it difficult to select teams identify where they need to improve or what players aren't keeping up with the intensity that the team are working at. So where did it begin? It started in squash and tennis, and this was like getting data of how many serves were successful, aces, how many forehands, how many backhands, for example. Performance indicators. These are skills within games. So as I said, it started in squash, and they would have looked at the forehand in squash, and then taking this into football. Then it could be a pass or dribbling or shots, successful shots, unsuccessful shots. They're performance indicators. So there are three types. These are the first one being technical, and this is usually given as a frequency or percentage. So this could be useful because you can then see how good your success rate is at hitting a forehand in tennis, for example. Movement. It's like set pieces, and it helps identify players' positioning at points in the game. So, for example, you could see how players' fitness is at later points in the game, so you can see if they're still sticking to the shape that you have identified them to be in. And lastly, tactical is the recognition of tactical patterns. So, for example, counter-attack. In basketball, it's important if you dispossess the opposition to attack quickly whilst they're outnumbered at the back. Notational analysis on basketball. So the 5 performance indicators I looked at were passing, layups, turnovers, 2-pointers, and a defensive rebound. And the player I'm going to be comparing this to is a small forward. So passing is what is needed to help get up the pitch in basketball other than dribbling. Passing is another way in which you can also create space. This is relevant for a small forward because they need to be able to create openings for their centre to score more baskets. Layup is another important skill in basketball, as it is possibly the easiest way to score baskets. This is because it is very hard to defend against rather than a standard shot that can easily get blocked. A layup is when you take 2 steps in the key and jump towards the basket, hitting the ball against the backboards and in. Now this is relevant for a small forward because if they create space by maybe feinting and the person keeps on thinking they're going to pass it to their centre, they can get into the key and take 2 steps to lay up into the basket. A turnover is another important skill in basketball because it is a clever way of dispossessing the opposition, allowing your team to be able to counter-attack. This is an important skill for a small forward because they're quite quick as well. They're quite good at getting up the pitch rapidly after dispossessing the ball. 2-pointer is an important skill in basketball because without them, your team will struggle to win games. A 2-pointer is a basket scored within the 3-point circle. And again, this is an important skill to have for a small forward, as if there isn't a pass on, they can take a shot themselves, or the thought of the defender thinking that he's always going to take the 2-pointer will draw him in, and then he can create a space for his teammates, like the centre. And lastly, defensive rebound is important in basketball. If the opposing team misses their shot, they don't get a second chance, and it allows you to counter. This is relevant for a small forward because if they're given too much space, he can offload a long-range shot, and he may be given too much space, allowing them to get a layup or a two-pointer. The method. Sorry, it took a bit long to load. Notational analysis method. So what I did is, firstly, I looked at important skills within basketball, and that's the 5 that I chose, which was like the layups, the passing, etc. And then I created this into a data collection sheet, which was those listed on the left-hand side, and then at the top was successful and unsuccessful. And then, so it was basically acting like a frequency chart. I then watched performance live and looked at Lou in particular, and calculated how many successful and unsuccessful shots he had, so two-pointers, how many defensive rebounds were successful, unsuccessful, and yeah, that's how we did it. And then afterwards, we went on to do video analysis. While the games were being recorded, I could then go back and look and see if I'd missed anything. So how effective is notational analysis? What are the pros and cons of notational analysis? So the pros of it is players can go back and rewatch their performance. So this is good because when given feedback, people may think, oh, they're just lying, they just want me to do this. But if you can visually see it, then you've got no excuses, and it would also help you to see how you can improve. So you can identify your weak points in yourself or as a team. It recognises lots of criteria. So this is mainly talking about not just focusing on the strikers who quite often get the recognition for scoring the goals, but for a defender getting these defensive rebounds, maybe not often a striker would do that. Percentages. So this could be a negative, I suppose, because percentage is good in the sense that I've had 7 shots, 7 were on target. That's 100% shot accuracy. But someone may have 1 shot and one goal rather than on target. So that means they have 100% shot accuracy and 1 goal, but they only attempted once. So another downside is it takes a lot of time to do the analysis, going back, rewatching the videos, even recording the videos, and you have to keep on pausing it, otherwise you miss things. And again, it's costly. The software is really expensive to use, and if you're not going to do it the basic way like we did. And linking ambiguity to the percentages, it can give a false image as it doesn't provide context. Movement then. So I'm going to look at distance covered. So Lou in particular covered 4,000 meters on the basketball pitch, whereas in comparison to James, who scored about 1,200 meters. So this is significantly more than what James achieved, and is actually significantly more than the mean, which was 1,600 meters. And above that is a schematic where on the court that Lou covered. So that shows, it's almost acting like a heat map. I can see exactly where he was in the game. Group data. So firstly, I'm going to look at the correlation of distance covered to steals. So on the left hand side it says the amount of steals that were completed alongside their distance covered. So it's looking at whether if a player did lots of distance covered, did they have more steals? And it generally shows that the R value being 0.18 and the P value being 0.561, which is actually above the 0.05, which does suggest there is not a significant correlation there. And then secondly, I looked at the difference between the video 2 points scored and the live 2 points being recorded. So I wanted to see whether it made a difference in comparison across being recording the data live and watching the video afterwards. And the mean in the video was 1.31 plus or minus 1.44. So in comparison that to the live, which there is a difference, the live it was 0.69 plus or minus 0.85. So the mean difference overall was 0.62, which had a p-value of 0.193, which again is more than the 0.05, so therefore is not a significant difference, but there is a difference there. Lastly, we're going to look at the graphs that I recorded. So the first one, figure 1, was looking at defensive rebounds between Lou and James. So the mean for defensive rebounds was 1. That was the average across the group, and Lou achieved the average, whereas James did not. The second figure, figure 2, was looking at 2-point shots and attempts. So Lou had a 50%, so this is again linking to ambiguity. Lou had a 50% conversion rate, whereas James had 100%. But the only reason why James had 100% is because he actually hadn't had a shot. So if he'd had 0 shots, he's got 100% accuracy because he hasn't tried, whereas Lou had. And then next, looking at layups attempted and missed. So Lou actually scored, it was two layups, whereas James attempted one and missed one. So Lou had 100% accuracy, whereas James had 0%. Lastly, looking at turnovers, the average was 1. James didn't achieve any, he didn't turn the ball over once, whereas Lou did score 6, so Lou is 5 above the average, which is astounding. And lastly, looking at the steals, the mean for steals was 1 across the group. James did not achieve any steals, whereas Lou did score 2, which is 1 above the mean. And then at the bottom here is my data that I collected and recorded, and shows the percentages of each scored, and down the bottom here is Lou and James highlighted. Thank you.